What's up, it's Aaron from Self-Actualization Systems, and today this is going to be the complete guide, breakdown, and overview of how to move from self-sabotage to self-actualization. And what we're going to be getting into today is 3 different looks at self-sabotage, which I don't see talked about, at least in this context, in the big picture context of self-sabotage, excuse me. And these 3 concepts are absolutely crucial to understanding where you are in your journey, what you need to do next, and also how to stop falling into blind spots and pitfalls on the journey, so that not only are you seeing success right now, but you can also set yourself up for success into the future. These 3 categorizations I have right here in my notes, and the first one is going to be your classic self-sabotage, the thing that most people think about when they're talking about self-sabotage and how they are essentially sabotaging their own progress. And doesn't need too much explanation, but I'll give it here anyway. So there's one part of you inside yourself which feels misguided, maybe even a little bit malicious, and it seems like it's fighting you every step of the way. How you can kind of compare this to is it's almost like you're trying to run a race with a parachute strapped onto your back. It's just pulling you back. And sometimes not only it doesn't just pull you back, but it can make you show up to the wrong race even. Or it can make you do something against your will when you're maybe, let's say that you're injured and you don't want to do the race, but you do it anyway because you think that you're going to be a pussy if you don't show up and all that kind of stuff. It can be so many different ways, but essentially it feels like there is a legitimate part of yourself which is misguided, a little bit malicious, or maybe even just stubborn and pig-headed. We've all been there, and is actively pushing you down, trying to make you be this person that you're not, or try and live up to this expectation which you never really had a conversation about with yourself. All of this kind of stuff is the first principle at play here. The second principle is something which is when I started to talk about things which I don't really see talked about in the big picture context when it comes to self-sabotage, and that is the principle of something being an illegitimate part of you. So the first part is Aaron, it's James, it's Maria, it's whoever it is, okay? And it's a part of them that's maybe stressed, or a part of them which feels like very stubborn and a little bit malicious because it's been, split off from the rest of us. Or maybe it's just the younger part, which is just naive. All of this kind of stuff, it's still something which we have to work with because it's a part of our internal system authentically. Now, there's an inauthentic part of us, which can be developed through introjection, from taking on an idea from a culture or a place or a thing, and taking it into this is me, this is mine, this is myself. An example being, let's say you got told that you weren't good enough when you were growing up, and you internalized that in your system. That's not a legitimate part of you, that's something that was given to you. Okay, so when we're working with inauthentic self-sabotage, is what we can call it, we have to use a different process in order to get overcome, transform, and heal that, so it's no longer a weakness, but it can actually become your biggest strength. So there's the authentic part, and there's the inauthentic part. And I mentioned the third one, didn't I? Now what the third one is going to be is a complete breakdown of the concept of skill development and innocence. So this is when you, yourself, in your entirety, either doesn't have the perspective or the maturity, the experience, the skill set in order to have a better perspective where you can overcome something that is X, Y, and Z, right? So an example for this would be, let's say that you want to start cooking something, but you're not good at cooking because you've never developed that skill. This is not a part of you that's trying to self-sabotage you by cooking really badly and like messing up the timing of things and all that good stuff. That's because you don't have the perspective yet. You don't have the experience. You don't have the maturity to be able to be adept in that problem. So these are the 3 broad distinctions. We're going to get into the specifics right now. And we're also, like I said, at the end going to have a little bit of a game plan, a concluding thoughts about how to make this much, much more step-by-step for you, so we can actually see progress for you straight away. So the signs of an authentic part of you that's simply split off from the rest of you, which is why it's making these maybe poor or rash decisions. The main thing you're going to be seeing is confusion. Okay, confusion from your end. It's almost like you've kind of been daydreaming and then you wake up in a situation or scenario and you don't really have an idea of how you got there. Now this is hyperbole, obviously. If you are actually experiencing that, then there's probably an episode in psychosis. But what I mean to say is that you've just ended and stumbled up somewhere in an unconscious kind of blather. And I know I talked about maliciousness, but when it comes to maliciousness with this, with an authentic part of you, it's actually very hard for it to be malicious. Now, there's exceptions, obviously, but 90% of the time, it will not feel malicious. That 10% of the time is because of how we're treating it, actually, because we're walling it off, we don't like it, we're saying to fuck off, we're saying fuck you, we don't need you, you're always bringing me down, all this kind of stuff. How can a part of us not feel malicious towards us? Okay, but the majority of the time, it will just be another part that's very headstrong or very stubborn, or somehow got given the responsibility by us to do this thing in this phase of life, and it's just doing its thing. But it's time for you to take over, for you to step up, right? So that gives away what this first point is, which is if you're dealing with this kind of self-sabotage, where it's a genuine part of you that's just trying to do its best or trying to do X, Y, and Z, we have to engage it in a dialogue, an inner dialogue. So this is where parts work comes in. This is where more traditional, Gestalt therapy and all that kind of stuff can come in here, which is when you role play and you talk to different parts of you and you use chairs to like sit in different positions and gain different perspectives. This is when this way of healing is so important. And this is also the way of healing which most people talk about when it comes to self-sabotage. So an easy exercise which you can do with this is something which I got from the integral thinker Ken Wilber, which is called the 3-2-1 method. Now, the way he describes it in his book, Sex, Ecology and Spirituality, will be a little bit different from my version, obviously, because it's my version. Also, he uses it for all shadow work. This isn't applicable for all shadow work, guys, or all inner healing. This is just for self-sabotage when you're sure that you can be talking to a real part. So, like I said, it's inspired by him, but this is my own take in it. So you're going to be sitting here in this chair, and you're going to place a chair in front of you, and you're going to start dialoguing with that chair. But in that chair, who's going to be sitting there is this part which is causing the self-sabotage. And what you're going to be doing first is you're going to be speaking from your perspective as if this is an actual other person sitting there, and you're just going to get everything you want out of it, okay? This is what I think of you, this is what you're doing, this is what's happening. So we are beginning the dialogue by role-playing different parts of our consciousness, okay? Now, it's very important that as much as we can, we have unconditional love for this other person, for this other part of ourselves. Because like I said at the beginning, how we actually create more of a wall between ourselves, which will just mess us up much further into the future, is if we start really showing resentment to this other part, or if we start being angry. It's okay for you to be angry, you have full permission to be angry, please. What's not okay is thinking that just by being angry and venting that this is going to solve the problem. No, it's not. We have to have an unconditional loving dialogue in order to actually get progress and results. This isn't about feeling good, guys. This isn't about just being like flowing around and unconditional love is cool because it's the buzzword of the day. No, this is the actual practical way to start 10xing your inner progress and your inner results so that your external world can change. This is the most practical way to overcoming negative beliefs and overcoming self-sabotage. I'm not just saying unconditional love because it makes us all feel warm and fuzzy, although it does do that, which is always so great. So after you get everything that you want to say from your perspective out, you go and then you sit in the other chair. So this is also from Gestalt therapy as well, if you guys know. You're going to sit in the other chair, and when you're sitting in that other chair, you have now become that part which is self-sabotaging you, whatever you want to call it. And now you are talking to yourself as that part. And what this does is it gives you a really clear and strong perspective shift, where you can understand where this other part is coming from and why it is doing what it is doing. Because here's the clue, this person is not doing that for any other reason. Sometimes it can be because we actually feel very pressured by a scenario and we don't want to take ownership for it, so we give this ownership to this part and it's just doing the best it can. It could just be because it just happens, there was no conscious decision and it just happened to have this responsibility and now you can take it back. It can be the fact that it's rebelling against us because it feels like it doesn't feel loved enough by us. It can be all of these different things, but we only know that when we take this things or this perspective, and then we can see how it feels about us. And then to complete this exercise, you keep switching until you find a resolution, okay? Just same way that you would talk things out with a loved one or a friend, and you come to a resolution where it's both agreeable for each other. And then after you come to that resolution, you just sit in the middle of those chairs. So it's symbolic, very symbolic. And you just hold both perspectives, both yourself and this other perspective, in love. So how you know when to finish holding yourself in love is when you feel like there's been some kind of internal shift within yourself. Now, if you can't come to a resolution, this is a little troubleshooting FAQ, then most likely it's because one of you is being very stubborn and not seeing the other person's perspective, okay? And that will be something which you'll have to overcome by yourself. It's much easier to overcome in a session, obviously, with someone looking over you, because they can point out certain blind spots. But most likely it's because you're stuck in a certain blind spot. So the FAQ of how to overcome that, just be really patient, have a few different sessions, and see if you can ask each other questions which the other has not thought of before. So it's time to get really, really creative with questions, because with questions, they expose the light of our consciousness to parts of our consciousness which we haven't looked at before. And that is the way to create new neural pathways. That's the way to create new perspectives. Moving on, the second part is when we are self-sabotaging, and it's self-sabotage not due to a part, but due to an inauthentic part of ourself, which maybe we mistake as a part, or maybe it is just a negative belief, and we know that. So the telltale signs is when you feel very small or very weak, and you still have the little bit of the unconscious like buzz or unconscious buzz in a situation where you have just self-sabotaged. But unlike the first point, what this is like is more of a self-defeating, concluding energy. Whereas the first one was, oh, I just did that again. How did I do that? I don't understand how I did that. I wanted to do this thing and then I just didn't do it. In the second part, the telltale sign for an inauthentic part that's self-sabotaging us, which is more like, oh, how did I end up here? Oh, it doesn't matter anyway, I'm just cursed. You see how that's kind of like a concluding statement? It's like a concluding like, oh yeah, that's just how it is. Okay, that is the telltale sign. Oh yeah, it's just because I'm not good enough, or it always ends up this way, it always happens. And it's just very self-defeating. It leaves you feeling very small. So this inauthentic part is the result of some foreign entity entering your internal ecosystem, entering your internal state of consciousness. Like I said, it could be something as simple as someone telling you you're not good enough. It could be as complex as an idea that keeps on being exposed to you due to culture. Like, oh, every time that something goes wrong in the relationship, because I'm a man, it's my fault and it's my responsibility and I have to deal with it and I'm always to blame. Okay, that could be from watching a certain type of romantic movie over and over again when you were a child. It could be, oh, my worth as a person is only valuable based on how much money I make, right? Due to a Western background. So it can be implanted in us in so many different ways, but the overlying principle, or the underlying principle, excuse me, is that it has been given to us as an introject, a cultural introject. Okay, we have learned it through that process rather than it being a bottom-up process of a part growing inside of us to be able to make money or run a business. Instead, this is much more of a top-down system, which is the introject is forced and given to us before we're ready. The telltale signs, again, of this is feeling small, but it can also be anger. This is something that I left out because I just remembered it now. Anger is a very good emotion at making us feel empowered when we are disempowered or doing something that is disempowering. Okay, so it can be a more comforting emotion. It can be like a nice, warm, soft, angry blanket that we can just wrap ourselves in so we don't have to feel weak or helpless or vulnerable or any of this kind of stuff. So just bear that in mind for when you're investigating to yourself, okay? That, is this anger because it's a projection, or is this because I'm angry because it's just hiding the fact that I don't want to feel weak, scared, and vulnerable? It's so crucial that you understand this, because if you don't understand this, you are probably setting yourself back decades of improvement. And I'm not exaggerating that at all. You do not treat this like it is a part of you. This is not a part of you, this is an introject. Because if you do treat it like a part of you and you're dialoguing with it, you're dialoguing with some random homeless person that's come into your house and you're trying to debate whether this person is your roommate or not. Like, you see how ridiculous that context is? Like, this is not a dialogue that you guys are having. This person is not welcome in your house. Now, it doesn't mean that we fall into being loathing or hateful or anything like that, because that's just bad for us. We want to still be unconditional loving to ourselves. But we shouldn't even be having that conversation because the context is just so out of context. It doesn't make sense. And if we do have that dialogue, then we can lose that dialogue. And suddenly this person who we don't know is safe or not is just living in our house. Okay? And that's how we get introjects that become parts of ourselves. And it takes so much more work and so much more effort to heal from that. And guys, this is the reason why I am bringing out very, very soon my product on the most practical guides to shadow work on the internet. This is all going to be my step-by-step system, which I am giving away for free. I was originally going to charge around 300 to 500 euro for it as a online program, but I'm giving it away for free because I want to give something back to the audience that I've created on YouTube. And this is going to be a systematic step-by-step guide of how not to fall into the pitfalls, blind spots, and road bumps that can set your progress back by months, years, and even decades, which I've seen both in my clients and also people that have kind of been in my periphery in the community. So not only is it going to stop you from getting that, but it's also going to give you the step-by-step bulletproof game plan about how to actually implement this into your life so that you can do healing successfully. So it's not only just avoiding blind spots, but you can actually do the active work yourself in the most effective and most efficient way possible. So stay tuned for that. And what's going to be going into that program, which I'm giving you here right now, is the fact that we need to differentiate different internal problems from each other. Now in the product, I'm going to be going into so much more detail. I'm going to be going into the 5 different internal issues, the 3 different shadow issues, as well as some other really, really cool frameworks, technologies, and big picture principles that is absolutely essential for your internal progress on this journey. But what I can give you right now is, because this is not an authentic part of us, if we talk to it like an authentic part, then it's more likely to become a part which is more ingrained in us. Instead, what we have to do, instead of dialoguing, is we have to find how this foreign entity was implanted within us. So that's with the use of questions, again, which I go over it in excruciating detail in this product, but it's asking the right questions and getting to the point of something called conscious conceptualization, where we can find how this started. And then the healing process here, I'm giving away the golden nugget for free, again guys, is we have to give that entity back internally to this other thing. We just have to give it back. Okay, this is where all that letting go stuff, where the guy talks about letting go and never actually says how to letting go, this is what it means. You have to, that's the things that you need to be letting go. If you're letting go of the first thing, an authentic part of you, then you are disowning an authentic part of you, which just creates more division, more chaos, and makes it much, much harder to integrate later. It'd be like abandoning your child and then showing up when they're 20 years old and being like, hey, daddy's back. You know, it's just not gonna work. Which leads to the third point of self-sabotage, which I have to put in here because I think a lot of you guys, or not, maybe not my audience actually, but a lot of people can get caught up in the branding of self-sabotage and they look for it everywhere. Not everything is self-sabotage. Sometimes we actually don't have the resources and the systems in place to be able to do this thing to the ability that we think we are able to do it to. And because of that, we think it's self-sabotage and there's some kind of unconscious issue, when in fact, there's nothing of the sort. And it's just the fact that we have innocence in an issue. And this for me was really, really crucial, understanding the difference between the shadow issue and innocence, because it saved me so much time on working on the wrong stuff with the wrong tools. So whilst what I talked about before is a division and a map of granularity when it comes to working through different internal issues and different shadows, what this does is it gives us separation between the different internal systems themselves, right? So there's innocence and there's shadow issues, and there's 3 different ones, which again, I'll talk about in the product in much, much more detail. But with an innocence issue, we have to tackle it in an entirely different way, which is we stop labeling it as self-sabotage, and then we build the necessary experience through diligence to actually build this skill set that we want to have. A telltale sign of what this would be is there's not really an unconscious fuzz when you're making these decisions. You're making conscious decisions, you're just making the incorrect ones. That's the telltale sign here. You are consciously choosing, you're consciously trying to go into conscious competence, but you're not there yet, so you're just consciously incompetent. Now, I'm not laughing to trivialize this because this is a very frustrating thing. If you take it really seriously, which hint, hint, you shouldn't be taking it seriously. You should be taking it with sincerity, with lightheartedness, and with fun. Who said that? Oh, wow, but that was great advice, right? That's how you should be taking it, okay? You should not be taking it as this is me, this is mine, this is myself, this means something about me. So this is much more of a mental framework, and much more of a mental switch that I'm giving you here. You don't want to take this as this means something about my personality in general. No, you instead are saying, well, okay, I'm not there yet, I've got some innocence around this, that's perfectly fine, that's totally fine. I'm just gonna crack on. Or, I'm not gonna crack on. Like, this is not the thing that I want to do. You can choose which option you want to go with. So you need to identify in your decision-making skills, what part of the decision or the action are you failing at, right? So it's much more strategical, it's much more step-by-step bulletin, whereas the other stuff was more unconscious. Is it the fact that I have issues around autonomy or initiation or follow-through or completion or celebration, right? The 5 different stages of motion. Again, I go into that much more detail into my product, that if you understand those distinctions, you can really see where the issues are coming from and just work on that skill set. Because what you don't want to be, I just had a call with my client, one of my clients, what you don't want to ever be is in a situation which is nuanced and which is vague and complex. You want something to be clear and straightforward. Doesn't mean that complexity bad or vagueness is bad, but when you're trying to become better at something, those are 2 things which are really not worth your time, so to speak. So you need to identify specifically where you are going wrong in that specific decision-making thing. For all you people hard on yourself, this is essentially what it means is you have to embrace the fact that you have innocence in this issue, okay? Which sometimes can be quite humbling. I'm speaking for myself here. You know, it can be quite humbling to embrace that, but it's something that we have to do, unfortunately. But once you embrace that it's just innocence, that it's not some part of you that's self-sabotaging yourself, you're no longer doing work that's irrelevant, and you're doing things which are actually going to move the needle from A to B. So you just end up saving so much time, energy, and resources. So, like I said, for me, although it's very simple, it was so important in my journey to discover this. So the last final remedy to this is being clear at where you're at, and then when you're clear on where you're at, you can set ambitious but realistic goals for yourself in realistic and ambitious timeframes for yourself. We do not want to overestimate ourselves. If we overestimate ourselves too much, then it can just lead to burnout, frustration, and then us maybe even developing shadow issues from that. Like I said, doesn't mean that we don't be ambitious. We can be super ambitious because we can believe in ourselves, but we're not placing unrealistic expectations on ourselves. It's like me, just because I've been going to the gym for a few years, getting upset because I don't make it into Mr. Olympia. Like none of us would ever do that, but yet we are doing that in a lot of different areas of our life. So to round up, we have the conclusion of all of these 3 different areas, which is authentic part of us, inauthentic part of us, innocence. So what you're going to do is you're going to identify how your specific flavor of self-sabotage is showing up in the world. And once you've identified that, you can work through the step-by-step practical guides that I've given you in this free guide to actually remedy that. And if you want something that's a little bit more, then like I said, I have my free product, which again was going to be free to €500 before I decided on it being free. I had that coming out in just a couple of weeks, and if you are interested, you just need to sign up and I'll send it straight over. It's going to have a bunch of content which is going to be so relevant for self-sabotage, as well as self-actualization and shadow work in general. So all of your internal issues, the way that I'm building it is going to be like the mecca which you can just reference to. I'm going to give it to all of my clients as well because it's going to be super useful for them, and they've been paying me for some of them almost over a year. So this isn't just a random free product. This is something which I very systematically thought out and planned meticulously to give people who actually go through it and actually follow the actionable game plan that I put in there. They can actually see transformational results in whatever time frame they decide to put into it if they're diligent. You just need to go through the steps that I've given you, identify what kind of problem it is, and execute. If you have any questions, both about the product, but also some of the stuff that, maybe some details that you want to know or that I've left out, please leave a comment below and I will get back to you with either paragraphs of response, or I'll give you a free video response so I can answer your question in much more detail. Enjoy.